Hey everybody, it's Colette Baron-Reid, and I have a fantastic guest this week to talk about the ornery Mercury Retrograde again for June. Robert Ohado is an intuitive strategist and fantastic astrologer, and he's been so awesome to come on a few times now to talk to us. Robert, thank you. Oh my God, when is this retrograde stuff going to be over? It's crazy.
I know, right? What's up, sugar?
Hey.
Well, let me tell you, this is the final leg of this retrograde relay that we've been in for the past really 6 to 8 months, if you can believe it or not. I'm sure everybody's feeling like they got put in a blender, mixed up, shaken and stirred, and I'm here to say that this is the final leg of this particular process. And I think one of the things that you talk about in your Envision work, which I think is a question to lead this retrograde with, and that is, where are you now? Right. So the retrogrades we've been going through, the ones that planets that are retrograde right now, are Pluto, Saturn, Neptune just went retrograde yesterday on the 9th, and Mercury went retrograde on the 7th. So I want to bring Mercury forward and kind of speak through Mercury on the behalf of all the other gods, because that's exactly what Mercury does in our psyche and also did in mythology. And the thing to remember about these cycles is that these cycles are happening in us. It's not that the planets necessarily are out there causing things.
Right.
Mercury is retrograde in you, in me, in the world, you know, in the world psyche. So what does that mean looking back after we just finished a 2.5-month Mars retrograde, right?
I thought we were done. I know.
That's done, but it's passed the torch to Mercury. And the cycle of Mercury retrograde happens in 2 signs, Cancer and Gemini. So what I want to do is speak through the energy of those signs and bring it down, keep it real for everybody. Now, Cancer is about where are you from, where's your heart, what nourishes you, what emotionally are your drives for living. And so the first part of this retrograde asks us to take a step back and reflect on that. Like, okay, well, where are you now after this retrograde relay thus far, especially the Mars one ending, and other ones still in motion, the bigger planets still in motion. Where are you? You know, what do you feel you need now? What do you feel you need for nourishment? And it's really about a consultation with your heart.
Wow.
So the thing is we are a mental-based culture. We think the mind is, you know, hyper-powerful and running the show, when really it's the caboose, in my view, of the train of power and of your consciousness. So as we sink into and move through this Cancer energy, I think it's a time to reflect on, you know, what is most meaningful emotionally and what's true to me in my heart. And in the midst of this next week, we have on the 12th of June, a full moon in Sagittarius. It's like a burst of intuition happening in the midst of all of this retrograde energy.
Wow.
And I see it as a chance to say, you know, intuition speaks through the heart. Right. And the mind catches up and then makes sense of it later. So now we're going to bring in Gemini. So Gemini, the Gemini part of this retrograde to me is about realizing that what Gemini is about is understanding things with the mind, which we have to do. I mean, we have to interface with each other, communicate, make connections. But the duality of the twins in Gemini symbolizes the duality of the mind and the tendency of the mind to polarize into either or.
Right.
And the real message, I think, of this retrograde is when you polarize into the either or, you leave the heart behind. Compassion's gone. You know, we can't enter into the gray, the rainbow of life, and the rainbow of ourselves. So one of the questions, I like to think of these cycles in terms of asking us questions. I think one of the questions this cycle asks us is, what happens when your mind goes into polarity? And when our minds go into polarity, we also lose our connection to intuition. So this retrograde to me is about the tendency of the mind to want, and this is why it's happening, I think, at the end of this blender we've been through. It's like the gods saying, the universe saying, hey, you know what? Don't give things a name too fast.
Right.
Be here now with yourself here. And our tendency is we want certainty, so we give it a name. We give things a name really quickly. And a lot of times we give things a name out of our need for black and white, so life feels controllable.
And doesn't it feel too, when we do that, when we give a name and we limit things by labeling and naming for certainty because we're afraid, right? But isn't it true, though, that once we've named it, it's very difficult for us to unname it, right? It's like unraveling because we've given it an identity that we're connected to, so.
Yeah, and we empower that fixed sense of it. instead of letting it, it's like, you know, when we start to love someone, and then people jump real quickly to trying to name what the love is too quickly. They actually shut the love down. So, and this is very true in this cycle of the heart of Cancer and then Gemini, and it's this transition. We talk about, a lot of times you've heard this, you know, the longest journey you'll ever take is from your mind to your heart. That couldn't be more true during this retrograde. It's about really sitting with that journey of mind to heart. Where am I? What happens when I'm up in the mind? What happens when I stay up here, name things too quickly, get rigid or polarized? And the thing that I also look at is what causes that in us to happen. And the most, I think the number one culprit to me is shame. So as soon as we feel any aura of shame, we want to get to certainty of good and bad because we want to be good. Right. And shame says, you know, if you're bad, you know, if you anything around you's bad, you're bad. So the goal here is compassionate, taking your time. So let me recap this. We've been through this whole process of all these cycles, trying to make something in us that's unconscious, conscious. Right. That's what all these retrogrades are always about. What's in you that's unconscious, that your soul is scheduled now, and your purpose is scheduled for making conscious now in your life. So this cycle of this retrograde, what it's bringing forward more than anything is it's asking, when do you fix something with your mind that shuts down a revelation of your heart? How do you do that? We all do it in our own particular way. And why do we do it? Well, there's shame. There's also the need for certainty, the need for us to feel like we can control our lives. And retrogrades always have this tendency of showing all of us just how out of control we actually are when it comes to a lot of facets of our lives. That's when the computers break. That's what one of the lessons is it's the ego is not running the show, the ego mind. It's useful, it has its place, but it's not the center of your consciousness or the center of the world. You know, so this cycle, I think, is about taking a backseat, reflecting, you know, everything in the retrograde is important to reinvestigate and bring forward. So reflecting on where have you been the last, I'd say even year, because a year ago we were in a full-blown Mercury retrograde in Cancer, and it's working its way into the air signs now this year, transitioning over the whole entire year. So it's really asking us, you know, where are you going with your life? What do you think is the source of your nourishment? What do you need to be the source of your nourishment? How do you locate where you are now? And what does it mean to locate where you are? Not with this, but with this. How do you do that now? And if you do, you know, what new choices when Mercury goes direct will you be called to make, to change and shift and bring your new set of values and needs and nourishment forward?
So interesting, because the idea that I think in a retrograde, if I'm correct about this, that we're also trying to take a look at what doesn't work for us. For example, you know, the compulsive consumerism is one area which doesn't nourish us. So we've actually been set up to create behaviors that don't nourish us with the guise that it will provide us certainty and nourishment, right? So let me ask you about Neptune. You mentioned, you know, on the 9th yesterday that Neptune went kerplowy. Hey, what does that mean?
You know, it really underscores everything I've just said, because Neptune is about the mystical journey of living and mystical pursuit of yourself and going into the depths of your soul. Right. You know, and getting coordinated with the sense of the soul purpose you were born for. You know, and I think that as a collective, we're having a dark night of the ego, I call it, because it's the ego that experiences the confusion and the sense of loss of power and coordination and the fixedness of things. Neptune kind of going retrograde is another pass. It's going to be in Pisces and going retrograde and forward for, you know, 10 plus more years. It's a very long cycle, but those long cycles represent a collective world shift. But we are the people in the world. Right. So it's in us as well, you know, and it's very, very powerful. That cycle has been insanely powerful in terms of really, I think, undoing, also even in our field, our concepts of what will nourish us when it comes to spirituality and self-help, and how the mind actually isn't as powerful as we thought before. It's to me, learning that it is the last sort of thing that interfaces and communicates, but if we really get you know, how many of us have made decisions in our lives that came from something deeper? You just knew what to do. It was, you go up here and you spin around and get crazy and get analytical, and it's this and that. It's the either or idea of choice. But when you drop into here, there's no either or. There's only the choice that's true. And that's what real discernment is. As soon as you've left discernment into either or, you're out of your knowing.
Right.
When you know what to, you just know, right? So I think this retrograde brings that forward and, you know, speaks on the behalf of the Neptune, Pisces retrograde, Pluto, Capricorn retrograde, Saturn, Scorpio retrograde. And later in June, Chiron's going to go retrograde. There's so many energies this month, like 5 massive players going to be retrograde. So I say this, I'd say don't name things too quickly. You know, don't do that. Let things be what they are. And I'm you know, I did an audio series on this. It goes into 3+ hours of even more depth on the whole cycle with exact dates if anyone's interested. But for now, just take that in. Like, I'm not going to name things until this starts to guide the next step, you know, and let things, because we're in a real collective and personal sense of chaos. And, you know, we talked about this last time, you know, chaos is the genesis of all things new, but can invite you away from yourself. So come back, come here. It's this lesson of staying here and not getting up here to name things too quickly, but letting life be and your purpose be something that your mind never could have planned.
You know, it's a really interesting time because June, we came out of a very chaotic month in May. I had Glynis McCants on a few weeks ago as a guest to talk about the numbers. And of course, the number 6, June, being really like a birth. And also 6 is a number of science, right? But it's the idea that we are also giving birth to something new, you know, and we all have to remember that because I think what's happening everywhere, I see it on my website too when people are writing in for readings, because I do these free things. Sometimes I'll do a chat on on Hay House Facebook page or whatever. And, you know, there's this striving for certainty beyond all measure. It's like, please tell me things will be certain. And the truth is like what we said ages ago when you first came on as my first guest, that our choice is not either or. The choice is the unknown. And feel that discomfort. With Chiron going retrograde, that's the wounded healer as well. So it's like I think from what I understand, Saturn being the restriction and more serious planet, right? So I was born with Saturn retrograde. So we have all of these different, I guess you said before, messengers that are telling all of us, hey, the work's not done. But it's really about not naming it during this cycle. I think that's great. That's very helpful.
Yeah, be patient. Let it name itself. Let it name it. If you're going to choose the unknown, that means you let it name itself, and it's your deeper self that's connecting with that name. And that's how you know it's authentic.
So you said you said that the Neptune retrograde is going to be going on for 10 years, and it just started yesterday.
Oh, no. Neptune retrogrades once a year for 5 months.
Oh, but it happens every year. I didn't know that.
Pisces for a while. It'll be in Pisces retrograding for 10+ more years.
Oh, and it's, I see. 10+ years, but right now, I get it. But now it is about the mystical reclaiming. Is it about, because when it's retrograde, it means to redo something, right? So it's revisit, reclaim.
Well, the bigger planets, their retrograde cycle is a little different than Mercury. Mercury kind of comes into those kind of slogans and those sort of things to kind of bounce around to keep you coordinated with its process. But the bigger planets actually function on an alchemy that's much different and much longer and much more in depth and not always as noticeable. That's where Mercury comes and triggers off events and triggers off the intensity of the other planets. And that's why I say he's the messenger, because just comes in and says, hey, on the behalf of Neptune retrograde, on the behalf of Saturn Scorpio retrograde, on the behalf of Pluto Capricorn retrograde, on the behalf of Chiron retrograde in Pisces, I'm coming in to give you all a message that's going to come through the archetypes of Cancer Gemini at this time. And so that's where we go, oh, okay. And that's where people feel it most acutely is during the Mercury retrogrades, because we always want our mind in control. And this is where the universe says, just like we need sleep, you know, the ego's got to take a break.
Right.
And something deeper has to come in and kind of reorient us, and then we wake up the next day. And retrogrades happen 20% of the calendar year.
Right.
So it's just like sleeping. We have to sleep like 20% of the 24-hour cycle, if not a little more, so that we can kind of reboot and regroup and move in life with, you know, some energy and some soul coordination.
was fantastic. Robert, what I'd like to do now is choose from my Wisdom of Avalon Oracle deck, your favorite. I know it was one of your favorites anyway, right?
Oh yeah, girl. You know I love my Colette decks.
So the Universal Energies forecast for this week of June the 10th. 3 cards coming up. This one feels right, and this one feels right. Disruption, focus, and the Earth Fairy. I'm going to pick another one because these here talk about an alchemy, Merlin. Okay, so disruption, of course, talks about the chaos. When we are in that chaotic cycle, when we're pulled away from the ego or the mind, or the chattering mind of decision making, and asking us to go back to the heart, right? To be compassionate through cycles that are slightly disruptive. And we do know that in Mercury retrograde, we know things are disruptive. We do. You know, plans go awry, computers break down, communications are sometimes misinterpreted, blah, blah, blah. So this makes total sense of this week. And it's interesting as well, it talks about focus. So what you said before about where is your focus? And because the Cancerian thing about nourishment, I think the focus has to be about nourishment. And what makes us feel like we are somehow having value in our home, right? And value not meaning, right? It's the value of home. What is home? Essentially, that's more of an esoteric question as opposed to like my house. Right? What makes me feel at home? And then also the disruption piece, I think, has to look at what has to go from that as well, right? Where do we polarize? The Earth Fairy is about physical stuff, so I'm wondering if this week we're going to have some news. That'll be interesting to see if I'm right about this, but some global news coming up where there's a real disruption, or maybe there's an earthquake or something. But typically it talks about the body. But I also believe that this means the body of one's life, not necessarily your physical body. You know, where are you grounded in home, right? So it's that sense of not being in the head, where are you grounded in nourishment again. And then the Merlin card, which I decided to choose a 4th one because the 3 didn't really totally gel to me, but this makes total sense because it's about alchemy, right? And the alchemy is about bringing together, like turning iron ore into gold, where the parts come together and they become much greater than their individual essential elements, right? So we have the possibility right now of that whole Gemini thing because we want to have healthy intellect. We want to have a healthy sense of the mind, but we can only do that when we're balanced in the heart area, and we're allowing. Now, by the way, too, Cancers hate having no certainty. Okay, hello, I'm a Cancer. Like, I need to know, right? And that's a hard thing for the sign of Cancer to not know. We'll go in our little hidey hole, right?
Right.
And we'll go like this. I am one, I know, right? I have a lot of.
Mercurius is the alchemical agent of the whole alchemical opus. You know, what? Mercury, that is the agent of the opus. It is the, and Hermes was Psychopompus, the guide of the soul to the underworld. So all those themes are coming through your cards. And also around home, we say home is where the heart is. Right. But I think home is the heart.
Home is the heart. 100%.
Home is the heart.
And how are we grounded in our heart?
People exploring that, like, my heart is my home. And we talked about this on the last time we chatted about people searching for home and the orphan and and the need to find home in oneself. But where in yourself is that going to be? In your head?
Right.
I hope not. No. That's pretty scary up there, So dropping down. Yeah.
Yeah, it's less about the mental strategy and the manipulation of the Gemini is very, very quick and mercurial, is right? It's Mercury ruled Gemini, right?
Mercury was the one god who could go to Olympus, but also then go down to Hades. If you were any other god and you went to Hades, you stayed there. And I think it's symbolic of, this is the part of your mind. The mind's usefulness is its capacity to surrender to an underworld journey, to the shadow. And find out what's going on down there. And you can't go into the shadow with judgment, or you'll just keep reinforcing the shadow. So this retrograde's about what's the way out of that? It's your heart. So, it's about my new foundation, my new home. So I'm just, whatever I see about myself, I'm not going to judge it. I'm going to love wherever I land in myself and wherever I locate myself in my life and in the world. And I don't have to like it, but I won't name it as bad or good. It just is.
So here's what's interesting. I decided to just choose 2 more cards for this week, the week of June 10th. Say, like, what's the overall theme? And it's death and wealth. So,
wow.
Right. And death only means transformation. It doesn't mean like everybody's going to die. Okay, just so y'all know. So, you know, it's not what you think. Yeah, so this transformation, and the wealth is in the transformation. And it's the true prosperity is of the heart. You know, that's because we're looking for things outside of ourselves to fill ourselves up, typically, right? And now it's saying to us, what nourishes us? Where is home? What do we think about? And how can we not judge or polarize? And this is a big week. I'm really curious to see what happens this week.
Huge. Because the mind erects the artifice because of the shame. So we want the art, we create something with our mind that we got to have, so we think that it'll nourish us, when in fact, you can't get nourished by anything other than authenticity.
Right.
You know, if you are who you are, if you land in your heart and meet life with that, you're always going to get nourished no matter what happens, even if it's a grief cycle, even if it's a loss cycle. You know, and that's what I think we're realizing the real wealth is just being you and not creating up here what that's supposed to be. That's shame. But what am I really? You know, and embodying that earth, you got to drop into the moment in your body, man, and feel it and be it.
This was awesome. Robert, you have a fantastic audio program that you release, because I buy them every Mercury retrograde cycle. I buy your 3-hour thing and sometimes sit with my headphones while I'm doodling and things. Really deep stuff, and I really encourage people to get this. Now, you have another course, though, that you are offering people. Can we talk a little bit about that? Tell me, what are you up to with this? Is this the Destiny?
Yeah, I did a 2-year program called Soul Destinies, actually, and I decided to make the first year of it available to everyone as a home study. People have been asking me for years,
Great.
You know, how do I learn astrology the way that you talk about it, the way that you move with it and think about it archetypally? So what I decided to do is bring it back for everybody for a couple months and make it available if anyone's interested in summer school with me. It's how do you really decode the blueprint of your life's purpose, your soul contract, I call it, through the tool of archetypal and intuitive astrology. That your birth chart is an insane, amazing, accurate map, not only of your soul's purpose, but how it's meant to unfold through cycles of time.
Fantastic.
So I teach people through 50 hours plus of instruction, and they get a workbook, and they get you know, me for, it's 3 weekend intensives in one.
That's
and you learn exactly the stuff that I speak through.
Oh, I love this. So we're going to post a link so people can find this. I'm very excited. I'll probably jump on it myself. I take all your classes that you have online, so I learned so much from you, Robert. I really do. It's been fantastic. I'm so happy.
Right back at you, baby.
And thank you so much. Wasn't that fabulous, you guys? So check out my website. You'll see a link to Robert's Soul Destinies home study course to take summer school with Robert, and also a really, really in-depth 3-hour conversation about the Mercury retrograde cycle that we're in right now. So there's plenty of deep content available with Robert. See you next week. Bye. Thanks for coming.
Talk to the mirror on the wall. She says I'm not the fairest one. Oh no, not at all. So familiar, down so low. No matter where I've been, there's nowhere to go. I was tired of waiting for my moment to arrive, and tired of painting up my life to survive. Still I found beauty in hard places, when I knew I could not fake it. And that's where I found you, so face it. We found beauty in hard places. Don't come easy, I know. It's so hard to claim a choice, so hard to let go. I looked in the mirror of your eyes. They say the other one was just telling me lies. I'm tired of waiting for my dream to arrive. life to survive. Still I found beauty in hard places. When I thought I could not make it,